I think it's important to talk about a couple of things. You bring up academia and the issues that exist. I think Alan Dershowitz is emblematic of a lot of the problems that do exist within this, what I would call somewhat of a protected class. He has a lot of dirt under his fingernails, and he's been able to skate for a very long time. But he is one of the most avid Zionists we have in this country. And I'm curious how this, relates to sort of this protected class that as long as you are pro-Israel, you are basically able to get away with what you're going to get away with. And then I think a second follow-up to that, which we can also get into, is the power of the evangelical right and the role that they play in sort of this Teflon approach to Israel in our country.
Alan Dershowitz is an interesting case because he did many things which by any elementary moral standard are really despicable. Among them were his consistent, persistent lying about what Israel was or wasn't doing in its relationship to the Palestinians. And what to me is interesting, you see, obviously I know a lot about Professor Dershowitz because our paths crossed, and unfortunately, it wasn't just ships passing in the night. Our paths crossed for a sustained period of time, by the end of which, in 2007, he had successfully made me not just unemployed, but was a separate category, unemployable. So I never worked again after 2007. I was in the midlife of the midpoint of my career, of what should have been the midpoint of my career. Because I was a Maoist, I didn't get started until 1988 as a professor, and then my whole career was over in 2007. So I was just 21 years, 19 years. And then I couldn't work at all. I'm serious. I know a lot of times I always have to say I'm being literal because the things I say sound kind of hard to conceive. I couldn't get a job as a door catcher after 2007 because of the miracle of Google. Whenever anybody in my day, when you applied for work, you would ask, typically you would be asked to supply 3 recommendations. By your generation, they didn't ask for recommendations at all. They just checked you out on Google. They just Googled your name. And when you Googled my name, what came up was Holocaust denier, anti-Semite.
Right.
Literally tens of thousands of websites. Literally tens of thousands of websites. So Professor Dershowitz, he had done many despicable things. Let's just take the most basic. There was a long period of time, up until maybe 4 years ago, when Professor Dershowitz was always described as Professor Alan Dershowitz of Harvard University, famed civil liberties lawyer, that was his descriptive, famed civil liberties lawyer. He wasn't a civil liberties lawyer. There's no truth to that. Alan Dershowitz, his career began in the 1970s, his public career as a public presence, not his professional career. He was a Harvard professor, and I assume he was competent in his field of expertise. But his professional career begins, he was a defender of pornography. That was his big thing, because back then, pornography was considered a civil liberties issue, because it was banned. There was widespread prohibitions. He was the lawyer for I Am Curious Yellow, which was the first pornography film imported to the United States. It was a French film, I Am Curious Yellow. He was the lawyer for Harry Reams, when Linda Lovelace
Deep Throat,
in Deep Throat,
1972. Yeah,
and she accused him of Harry Reams of having brutalized her on in the filming of Deep Throat. He was the lawyer for Deep Throat. He was then the lawyer for Klaus van Bülow, who was credibly accused of killing his wife. He was the lawyer for the Jewish Defense League when they killed a woman who was the secretary of a fellow named Sal Hurek. He was the lawyer for Mike Tyson. He was the lawyer for O.J. Simpson. He was the lawyer for every high-profile wife batterer, rapist, murderer, or spousal batterer and murderer. He was the lawyer for all of them. That came under the rubric of famed civil liberties lawyer. That's not a civil liberties lawyer. That's not a civil liberty.
It's a criminal defense lawyer.
Right. It's a criminal defense lawyer, and a criminal defense lawyer with a red thread running through it. Women who were raped, battered, or murdered. That's his MO. That's Alan Dershowitz. That never did any harm to his reputation. Any harm. If you were to Google now, your listeners can do it on their own. Your viewers can do it on their own. If you were to go now and look at the parade of academics who are celebrating Alan Dershowitz when he is retired or retires from Harvard Law School, it's everybody, a who's who of academia is there. And the Harvard Law School dean, Martha Minow, she's singing the praises of Alan Dershowitz. She's a famous feminist scholar, a feminist legal scholar, knowing full well his record, singing his praises. And among the other things, that's his public defense activity. Then there is the Israel stuff, the lying in very serious cases of Palestinian detainees who were tortured by Israel. They bring their cases to court because there were deportation cases for them. Israel's trying to deport these detainees who ended up in the United States. And he's lying and saying Israel doesn't practice torture. Where people were facing the prospect of being deported back and being tortured again. And he's lying. What happened to Dershowitz? It's a very interesting thing. It's an interesting thing. He suddenly becomes a pariah, not even over the Jeffrey Epstein case. Not even, he was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer.
Oh, yes. It makes perfect sense. I can see they'd get along swimmingly.
Sure. Of course it makes perfect sense. And as far as I can tell, his accuser, Virginia Gifford, she's completely credible. And at least the allegations against him. In any event, what happens? Even the Jeffrey Epstein doesn't turn people against him. It was because of Trump. Because he supported Trump, all of a sudden, the woke people on Martha's Vineyard turned him into a pariah. Mm-hmm. They didn't care about the Israel stuff. They didn't care about the misogyny. They didn't care about the fact that he got Jeffrey Epstein off. It was even interesting. So Jeffrey Epstein got 1 year, in the first trial. He got 1 year. He was out in his own recognizance all day. He only had to come back. He had his office outside. He only had to come back at night for his sentence. And Dershowitz was asked about it, and he says, "Do you feel bad in retrospect when it came out that he had done this and done that and done that?" Dershowitz said, "Feel bad? The only thing I feel bad is that he got 1 year. I think he should have gotten scot-free. Now he's saying this after all the claims and allegations against Epstein. That didn't alienate anyone. People like, Jeffrey Toobin.
Yes.
Yeah. Toobin is singing his praises.
Yeah.
And then Toobin has an article. I think it was, I can't remember where the article was. It may have been the New Republic, but don't count me on it. Toobin has an article. What happened to Alan Dershowitz? Because he's defending Trump now. As if he had a clean slate up until his defense of Trump. And if you ask me, I can't prove it. And when I'm speculating, I want to quickly admit to saying I speculate. If you ask me, what happened was Dershowitz was afraid he was going to be convicted in the Jeffery case, the young woman who says that she had sex with him, non-consensual sex. So he was afraid. So he was defending Trump to get a get out of jail free card in case he was convicted. That's all he did. I mean,
he's a snake. He is just such a snake. He even looks like a snake.
But you know what? Here's the thing. You want to know what? In my opinion, they're all snakes.
Yes.
Jeffrey Toobin, he's also a snake. They're all snakes. The difference is, for me, Alan Dershowitz, I know you'll laugh. Yeah, so you'll forgive my analogy. Alan Dershowitz, to me, he's like Michael Jackson. He is what he is.
Sorry.
He is what he is. That's who he is. I never really faulted Michael Jackson.
Same.
Because Michael Jackson, apparently, he had an illness. It was a serious illness. He couldn't control himself. The problem was the enablers.
Yes.
All the people that knew what was happening, but they couldn't resist the money, the celebrity, the connections, and they enabled Michael Jackson. You may not agree with me, but that's how I feel about the parents of those kids. I don't know about your mom and dad, either of you. I don't know about your mom and dad, but I remember Michael Jackson when he came out with I forgot the name of the album, but with Beat It.
Yeah, Thriller.
Thriller album, the Thriller album. And when he performed when he did the
it was Billie Jean. It was Billie Jean at the Grammys, right?
Well, it was whenever he said beat it, beat it, beat it, he was grabbing his crotch and
right.
Right?
God.
So it was out there, right? It was out there. Now, are you a parent? Jen, are you a parent?
I am.
Okay. If your kid came over to you and said, Mommy, Mikey wants me to stay over at night, would you let your kid stay over?
No, and of course not. But this is one of those things where when you say things like that, you're blaming the victim. And the thing is that the parents are basically selling their kids.
No, but what
selling their kids. So allow me to finish and I'll hear you out. I want to hear you out. So it wasn't Michael Jackson. It was the enablers who didn't suffer from that mental illness, who knew fully well what was going on, and didn't sit down with him and say, Michael, you have an illness. There's a serious problem here. And if you don't turn yourself in, I have to turn you in. Nobody did that. And it was the same thing with Dershowitz. None of them said, you know what, Alan, what you're doing is fucked up. It is serious.
Ron, does.
Excuse me?
I'm teasing. It's a joke.
Go ahead.
It's seriously fucked up. No, but because he was the celebrity lawyer. And so they all kissed his ass. You go see in the YouTube one panel, 5 people or 6 people. 2 panels, second panel, 6 people, third panel, 6 people. You'll see Jeffrey Toobin there. You'll see Steve Pinker there. You'll see all the big names in academia and in journalism. They're all there kissing his ass. The enablers, the enablers like Elena Kagan, who was the dean at Harvard Law School when I had my troubles with him. And then she went on to become the Supreme Court Justice.
I know.
They are the ones I loathe. Alan Dershowitz is Alan Dershowitz, like Michael Jackson is Michael Jackson.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.